This week on London Real, we have the world-famous stand-up comedian and actor, Eddie Izzard.
It's good to be a minority, but I'm a white male middle class, so thank God I'm a transvestite. Comedians we're mental athletes. People pay money to be tricked into thinking they're going that way. Oh no, they're going that way.
Comedy unites. Your comedy in multiple languages unites even more.
I'm a student of things, of patterns. In comedy, I can hear the thickness of a laugh. In drama, I can feel the fatness of a silence. 200,000 years ago, we were 10,000 people. Now we're 7 billion. We've got to make it work for everyone. If not, say goodbye to the world.
London Real presents Eddie Izzard, Force Majeure.
Despair is the fuel of terrorism, and hope is the fuel of civilization.
When it comes to British comedians, it doesn't get much bigger than Eddie Izzard. But Eddie isn't really British. He is born in the Middle East. He says he thinks like an American, and he is a British European. He does his comedy in English, in French, in German, in Spanish. He is really a unique man. He is one of a kind. He's been out as a transvestite for the last 30 years. And in honor of having him in the studio, I decided to paint my nails with the British flag there. I'm not sure if you can see that. And the European Union flag on the other side. Because I respect Eddie so much for his honesty and his openness, and quite honestly, for his gumption to do what is true in his heart. You know, and I think that's what makes him so creative, because he's so honest with himself and the world about who he is, and always has been, really. And Eddie is a fascinating guy with all the things that he's gone through in his life, and all of the different pursuits that he's that he's challenged himself with, really. And we talked about doing comedy in different languages, how he believes that comedy is not nationality based. There is no British sense of humor, there is no English sense of humor, and it's a way that really unites us more than anything. And I believe that he is on a mission to really unite the world as he travels to 28 different countries, including Nepal and Russia. And he says it's the same comedy in Oklahoma City and in Melbourne and in Moscow. And I always think that comedy is about uniting people, but Eddie's comedy takes it just to the nth degree. And so we were super excited to have him in the studio. And to be really honest with you, he's probably one of the biggest guests that London Real has ever had. He is doing 30 consecutive dates in 2016 here in London at the Palace Theatre. He is just such a big star, and we were really honored for him to come down and speak so frankly, and even talk about politics, running for mayor in 2020. And quite honestly, I think he would make an amazing mayor. He seems to really care about people, about connection, and about the human spirit. And he really thinks that Britain should be part of Europe, and that we can't do this alone, and we all need to really get over this concept of borders and come together for one, real reason. And that message really resonates for me with Eddie. So great honor having him. I hope you enjoy him. He's also wearing a killer set of heels in the studio that, quite frankly, I'm a little bit jealous with, and I'm okay with that. So check that out. If you're listening to us, definitely watch it, because he looks great, and he really has got a lot more to give us, and I can't wait to go see his comedy in person. A lot of people have been asking me about this thing called the London Real Academy. It's very likely that you're watching this now on the Academy, but what it is, it's a group of the hardest core London Reelers from around the world. It's about 1,000 of us, and we get together to build the best version of ourselves. We push each other, we set goals, and if we don't achieve them, we're accountable. We watch premium content together, we watch live episodes together, and we get together in person. It's all about the offline experience. We have meetups here at the studio in London. We have them in Amsterdam, in Berlin, in Paris, in New York, Toronto. It sounds like an Eddie Izzard comedy tour, right? And we get together and we really look each other in the eyes, and we try to find a solution. And we try to really, to live this life to the fullest. And so a lot of people keep asking me questions about it. It's so hard to describe. So I made a short video about it. Check it out.
Entrepreneurial journey, it can be a lonely road. I push myself in so many areas, but you know, you can't do it all yourself.
The thing about the Academy is, it's like, look, you have the ideas, you have the ability, you have the skill, and you have the sort of ambition for yourself. But when you have a group of people pulling you forward, it's so important.
Accountability is what's missing from most of the programs or any gurus or any internet mentor that I had before.
I wanted to get some accountability. I wanted to make myself accountable to a group, to you.
The reason we started the Academy is because I felt like we were doing these amazing talks, like we'd have a Peter Sage episode or a Dan Pena episode or a Kala or someone, and you get super inspired, and then YouTube stops, and then you go back to your life and you don't make any changes. And it was just like, what? It felt like, what are we doing? If you're designing your life right, the good times are now. And in a few years, you'll look back and say, wow, that was amazing.
The thing about the Academy is it has so many different sort of layers to it. I think your web seminars are awesome. The way you broke it down and the style of your teaching is pretty awesome.
I like the feed. When I have to motivate myself, I kind of look at others struggling and getting over those struggles. So I actually follow daily the feed.
Best feature would be the sort of Facebook aspect of it, the social media aspect of it, as in creating a profile with your goals, your dreams.
So everyone's on the same vibe, and we may be at different stages in our journeys, but everyone's on the same page at the end of the day. Everyone's really trying to push themselves and building the best you. It really resonates with me.
And the fact that I'm committing a small amount of money and the fact that I'm actually trying to interact with those people means that I'm invested and means that I will keep it for the long run.
You have to be serious about yourself and what you want to achieve. And if you're serious about yourself, this is going to be such a fantastic platform.
London Real, sponsored by Bulletproof. This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. My guest today is Eddie Izzard, the world-famous stand-up comedian, actor, and marathon runner. You began your career in 1983 as a street performer in London's Covent Garden and have gone on to play Madison Square Garden, Hollywood Bowl, and have won 2 Emmys. You've acted in London's West End in the films Ocean 12 and 13, and most recently in the US hit drama Hannibal. In 2009, you ran 43 marathons in 51 days, raising nearly £2 million for charity. 3 years after launching your world comedy tour, Force Majeure, you performed in 28 countries throughout Europe, the US, Africa, Russia, Australia, India, Nepal, and the Far East. In February, you will play 30 consecutive dates at London's Palace Theatre. Eddie, welcome to London Real.
Thank you very much.
It's nice to have you here. I think your Twitter description says so much. When you describe yourself, I'm a British European, I think like an American, I was born in an Arabic country. When I look at your schedule, it feels like you work like an American. They said James Brown was the hardest working man in showbiz, but you are touring kind of nonstop. And I was wondering, you said once that you had a 50-year plan, that you like to think like Steve Jobs. Why work? How do you work so much?
Well, I couldn't get anything going. I had my wilderness years in the 80s, sort of along the lines of the same as Margaret Thatcher's career in politics. Is it a career in politics or the time she was in government? I couldn't get anything going in the 80s. It isn't linked to Thatcher, but it seemed like it. But things took off in 91. I think that's when she left government. But so since things started going, since I worked out, and I pushed so hard to try and get it going, and I really wanted to act when I was 7. So going through between drama pieces and stand-up comedy, I felt I started trying to get into things at 7, and it took off when I was 30. So I feel there's 23 years of grafting away. So I want to keep it going, and there is a place I just study things. I'm a student of things, of patterns. A student of humanity, student of history, how human beings repeat in history, student of careers, how do they work? Maybe an analyst would be better. Just I analyze all these things because that's like a tool. I mean, you're in finance, the analysts there, these people who work out how the algorithms work, or they can invent the algorithms to watch and crunch the numbers and see the patterns, but then no one can see everything. I just like to analyze everything. And so my analysis is, if you keep pushing and you keep reinventing, if reinventing isn't the right word, keep your game high, keep match fit, keep thinking, okay, I've done that, now what can I do that's better, how can I change this, then you'll probably stay in the game. But there's a lot of careers that crash and burn, which is a Steve Jobs way of talking about things, or maybe that's Silicon Valley way of talking about things. The Lost Interview by Steve Jobs. Because you mentioned I think like Steve. I don't remember saying I think like Steve Jobs. I remember saying that I do like Apple stuff, and I think there are certain things I do. I think at certain parts of the way I think, which is like Steve Jobs, but I don't remember actually saying that to anyone or articulating that. But the Lost Interview is the one.
It's the 1 hour interview. It's before he's going back to Apple, right?
That's the key thing. It's 10 years out.
Yeah.
He's burnt and sort of come to a deal with it, but as long as he doesn't talk about it. I don't want to talk about it, he says. And there's still a defensiveness in his attitude on certain things. But then he went back in a year and a half, and then everything that he had planned to do came out, because the stuff that he was doing when he got back in, I don't think that was anything particularly different to what he was doing before, in style and things. I said, let's invent things that people don't know that they need yet. Let's do things that they haven't asked for yet. But suddenly he hit the payload on, I suppose it was just the music, put the music thing in one little thing, that iPod, and people said, oh yeah, that seems simple, I'll have that.
So do you like Steve because he gives the customers something they don't know they want?
No, I find that an interesting idea. I don't think I'd quite thought of it in those terms. I did buy an iPad thinking, I don't know why I want this. I like it because there's certain things he says in that. So I don't quite identify the thing that people don't know that they want, even though I find it an interesting concept. I don't feel that's part of my thinking yet. I might adopt it as part of my thinking, but I hadn't thought in that way. He said Microsoft was king at that point, and Apple was dying on the crash and burn glide slope. And he said, I don't decry them their success, I decry them the lack of taste. That was the thing. He was pushing for taste. But also in his analysis of that, he said it's the product, and dealing with the people who make the product, they can be a pain in the ass, but the product is the thing, and they think it's the process. I think he said IBM thought it's the process. They got the process worked out. We could take from this to this, then we do the marketing, we've got this great marketing, we've got great this. What at the fucking thing? Is the thing any good? The first thing he did was brought out, machines with color. Because there was all this off-white plastic. I didn't know why it had to be this off-white plastic, all of them.
Yeah, and he used to design the interiors of the computer. I remember I got an Apple II Plus in '83 or '84, and the inside looked good. And that was always important for him.
People say that it's the why is why we buy Apple. It's because of the why. Like, why do they do what they do? Because they want to be exceptional. They want to do this. They want to do that. And that's why we fall in love with their products. Whereas you don't fall in love with the why of Microsoft or IBM. It feels more utilitarian.
No, well, Microsoft was weird. It was so aggressive, and then they were bringing out Windows, but then Apple had come out with Windows ages before. And it was almost like the Betamax thing. It was almost like Apple was going to go the way of Betamax, be better than Microsoft, but not got the marketing right. And then Steve Jobs came back in and the iPod, and boom. Anyway, when I do things like touring France in French, it's off the list. This is what I think. This isn't, maybe that is, the French people didn't know they wanted to go and watch English people do comedy in French. Maybe that it does a bit like that. I don't know if that's the same thing, but I consider it off the list. I've started doing things which are not on the list. There's a list of things you've got to do in comedy. You get a comedy thing, you get your show, you get the Edinburgh Festival in Britain, you get a sitcom, or you do a panel game, maybe a film if you're doing very well. Try and get America. How can you do that? Tricky isn't. But I decided I'll go and tour France, and when I started doing that, no one in France believed it could work, no one in Britain believed it could work, no one gave a shit. They still don't really give a monkeys about it, but I've just toured, sold over 5,000 tickets, 15 cities, 24 shows. I think it's beautiful. It's 200 years since Battle of Waterloo. That's what I do. And I've toured Germany and played Berlin for 2 months, and I'm ready to tour Germany and Austria. Spanish, I get Central America and South America. Russian, the whole of Russia to tour, and then once I learn Russian, and then Arabic. And so doing things which are not on the list, I find that fascinating, because I think that's a vision. And it's got a few, and I like doing things that has a few positive things, because if I do it in French, there are French acts I know, and I've met them, and some of them I've pushed and said, you go and do it. Well, two of them in particular, I've said, go and do it in English. Why not, And Gad Elmaleh is one of the top stand-ups in France, and he says he can tour the world now in English, using this secondary language, or second language. He can play in English to all countries of the world, because all the kids are learning English, because it's so simple on its basic level, and it's such a good communication tool. Advanced English is quite tricky, but it's good on its basic level. So just being off the list or off-piste, I find that interesting. It is going to places that no one's bothered to think about. But it's got this positive message. And now the French are doing it in English, the Germans are doing it in English, the Russians are doing it in English, Italians are doing it in English, Scandinavians, Dutch. Soon, every country that I predict, every country of the world is going to be hammering it in English.
They love you in France, right? And the Parisians tell the other Parisians to go see you.
Are you asking, or you know this?
Yeah, I think I thought I heard this.
The ones that know, yes, they're really supportive. They've got on television and said you should go and see this guy. And so the ones who know, they absolutely thumbs up. I think so. I'd say the French people who know what I'm doing, they are very supportive. The French people who don't know me from Adam. But that's like in America, that would be mainstream America. In Britain, it's also, there's a big chunk of mainstream Britain doesn't know me. But I have quite a chunk of Americans who will, oh yeah, I know the guy, and British, but there's still a large part of France. I'm still on the cult level. I've got to get into, there's a level between alternative hit. I've got to get to the alternative hit, and I'm still on a cult status. 5,000 tickets. My executive assistant, she lives there, and she says she can sense that my profile has spiked up because I did a ton of press coming in. And I have to go on things like this, but do it tout en français. Et je peux parler en français. Je peux faire une interview. C'est très facile maintenant pour moi de faire une interview comme ça. I can do this all in French. In fact, I did a round table thing for an hour and a half with other guests who were talking about this, and they had prepared pieces and stuff, and two well-known actors in there, and a moderator who's linking to it, and I could stay with it in French. And that is really kind of high level, but you have to get that good. No one actually gives you points for doing it in the other language.
Okay.
That's the interesting. You don't get brownie points. You get brownie points, pat on the back brownie points, but you don't get, I'm going to come and see you brownie points. Let's go see the guy who's not really that good at our own language. You've got to get above a certain level to say, that guy is funny in this language. And then there's also the ability in the, because I learn the show line by line like a script form, but I keep developing my spoken ability. But my level of learnt script is higher than it has no faults in it, whereas my spoken spoken chit chat interview stuff will have faults in it. So they will judge me. Anyone listening would think, okay, he's quite good at French. But in the actual show, I'm very good at French because I'm going from a script, and I can improvise for a bit when I'll go slightly down a bit and go a bit off and make a few more mistakes, and I come back on, and it's perfectly line by line. I've decided to move to this. Before, my initial French shows were all a bit scrappy and a bit here, and that line doesn't really work. And what is he trying to say there? And
just more attuned to your original comedy was figuring things out, making the observations, more on the cuff.
In a way, but it was not in tune to the level of English that I was using. My level of English was always high. Obviously, I'm not making any grammatical mistakes. If I do, I say that is a deliberate one. So I can say United Kingdom people. No one says United, it doesn't exist as a saying, but I can say it and I say, I'm saying that, and I will just push that through. And I know that United Kingdom people is going to work rather than United Kingdomic people will not work. Whereas in French, I probably couldn't work out the best sounding thing to say.
Right. And German as well, and now Spanish.
Yeah.
I remember I saw you do an interview where you said the joke in German, I think it was the only thing Caesar got was the salad, and you worked on that verb, and so it looks like you've got it down to where it's great comedy in German. The beat is there.
It's exactly the same as French or anything else. The interesting thing was I thought German was going to be difficult because they have their verbs, they put them at the end of the sentence, which is totally alien to English speakers unless you do poetry or unless you think of a poem. And you say, on the burning deck of the bridge, I did stand. That is a Germanic thing, where I did stand. And we actually, in poetry, we're used to that, aren't we? And we can deal with that. But that's all the Germans do, is they go, I did stand, they put it right at the end. So to repeat the thing that you mentioned, just because I do find it fascinating, Caesar, did he ever think he'd end up as a salad, is the line. And Caesar hatte je gedacht, did he ever think, dass einmal, that he one time, als Salat enden würde, as salad end up would have. And they laugh at the same point. And I thought you'd have to take everything into the present. I actually asked German comedians, what do you do? And saying, I don't know, I don't analyze it. And they don't actually change anything. The verb comes so close behind the noun that it doesn't seem to matter.
And because you're a seasoned comedian, when you do it on stage, you know when it works. And you can
well, you
play
know,
with it.
if they laugh, then it's working, and if they don't laugh, it's just that. So.
But I've been taught all my life that every culture has a different sense of humor.
That's bullshit.
I did a stand-up comedy course like 5 years ago when I came to Britain, and everyone was like, okay, you're the American, you're gonna bring this to the table. British has the dry sense of humor, the this and the that. But your jokes are the same in Oklahoma City, Moscow, Melbourne.
I don't believe there is an American sense of humor.
Okay.
Is there an American sense of music? No.
No.
Is there a British sense of music? No. Can British people, like the Beatles, take black R&B and then put a guitar sound on it that might be more white American guitar sound? Well, the singing would be more that, and then take that back because their melodies could be the Beach Boys doing the same. I don't know, they weren't listening to the Beach Boys at that time. But jazz invented by Americans. A Chinese kid, brilliant on sax, does jazz. You can be a brilliant Chinese sax player. Jazz sax player. There are no national senses of humor. And if you analyze it, you've got, what is an extreme, Andrew Dice Clay, when his stand-up against Robin Williams. Are they comparable? Is that the American sense of humor? Or which one are you going to choose? Because they are fucking miles apart. The point is there are multiple senses of humor in every country, which of course it is, like there's multiple senses of music, multiple tastes of music in every country. So in comedy broadly, there's a mainstream sense of humor in America. Jokes will be sports stars, political people on television, brands and things. Who's that on the television? All that stuff. Then the more alternative, progressive comedy, which is playing with the form and post-Lenny Bruce America, the alternative. Yeah. So that where you're pushing the edges. It can be political, it can be surreal, whatever it is. that is the same in Britain. All I've got to do is link up with the people who like progressive surreal comedy. And then it's references. It's the references that are national. It's not the sense of humor, it's the references. So, you know, Patton Oswalt's a great comedian, I love his stuff. If I played to Patton's audience, if he played to my audience, we'd both get the same thing. It's, you know, they'd get it. Jerry Seinfeld's audience, I could play to them, Jerry could play to my audience. Surreal, offbeat, not exactly the same Mike Birbiglia. There's a whole bunch of comedians that can do the same stuff. Python-esque. I just find the Python, people like Monty Python from around the world. And
you de-anglicized your comedy 15 years ago. You took all the references out.
Well, it's in fact, it's even weirder than that. You made it universal. But I talk about medieval kings in this show, in Force Majeure Reloaded, which we're doing here in the West End in January, February. And so I talk about Richard the Lionheart and Bad King John, as we know, King John Lackland. Now, most people in Britain, they've already heard Richard the Lionheart, and that's about it. He didn't speak any English, he spoke only French. So it goes into that. Now, but once you've introduced those terms, which are English kings and medieval kings, then you can play with them. So you can actually talk about anything. So American could come over and they could have a whole load of American reference show, but they'd have to keep introducing, let me tell you about Hershey's bars. We don't know what they are. It's a chocolate bar, and I grew up, and I had one, and somebody stole it, and then you could have a whole story about that. Whale Rider, the film, if you've ever seen Whale Rider, or if you think of any independent film that's kind of odd, maybe Little Miss Sunshine, you've seen that?
Yeah, I love it.
So, pageants, beauty pageants, people don't necessarily know about that, but as you go through, you go, okay, they're good.
So they educate the audience the first half hour.
In the story, they just drop things in. They don't have to do expositional lumps in there. They can just edge it in. Oh, the kid's going to do some sort of dance. The granddad's been teaching her dance. What the hell's the dance? Blah, blah, blah. That's the thing. We can lace things in. I could go, there's a thing called a curly whirly, which was a sort of nougat and chocolate thing. And they're funny named and curly whirly, and they were flat and they were lattice shaped. And if I talk about curly whirly and tell people what it is, I'm like, kill for a curly whirly. It's like a sword, and you wouldn't have a good fight with it. But I could do that, and then after that, I could talk about curly whirlies throughout the entire show because I've introduced the thing. Just like it becomes story logic. It just, if you know about writing stories, then that you can put into your stand-up. So it's just the references. If you make them universal, it saves time. If you talk Kit Kats, they're all around the world. Or just say a chocolate bar, chocolate's all around the world. You don't even have to get brand, you know. If that's your punchline, then that's going to be the first time you knock that word out. You better make sure it's universal.
You said you love to analyze things. You've obviously thought a lot about this. Do you analyze all strains of comedy from the past, current, and then think about where you want to go with your comedy? I know you played Lenny Bruce on the stage. You know, do you get really detailed in the analysis, or do you do more with what feels right?
Only in whatever I want to analyze. Like, I started doing political comedy, but then because I wanted to go into politics, I thought, actually, I'm going to leave that. I won't do party political comedy. It's also dates. It dates so terribly, party politics. You could do something, within a few days it could be old. It could be a beautiful thing. What a great idea. Oh, I've got it into whole shape. Oh, it's gone. I even know how to reclaim topical material, which for anyone watching at home, it's quite a useful trick. If I did something about, say the last election in Britain, so that was quite recent. So you could have a piece about the election, as time goes on, 2016, 2017, you talk about the last election, that's 2 years ago. But then you can reclaim it by saying general elections, and you can do a whole piece about all politics in general. It's about winning and losing and things like that. And you can actually retabulate the title of your piece, and you can take an old piece of what was topical material and slot it in and make it into a historical piece, because you're talking about how elections are won generally, and then you can go back in the past, and then back in '79 there's elections, back thing, there's World War II in 1945. Churchill lost election. How can you lose an election? And you can just talk about loads of elections. And then you can put your one in, and it doesn't feel dated because it's all part of a historical thing. So if you take something topical and it loses its topicality, go back into history, find a whole bunch of that stuff, or try and lace it into a story that has a historical foundation, and then no one says, oh, not the medieval kings. God, can't talk to me about medieval. That's not topical. That's so 1300s, late 1200s, you know. So you're fine, and you can actually hide it in a different place. You can just rebrand it as a historical piece.
So you have analyzed that, or is that very obvious to you?
I know that came into that hit me at a certain point. I worked that out. So I constantly analyze things, and I work out some things. I mean, the Twitter definition. What did I say? I'm a British European.
Mm-hmm.
So that was, if you've got African Americans, Italian Americans, Asian Americans, as America is now some years old, so what are you, 250 now?
Yeah, 240.
240. All the stuff that in the European Union we're going through, we're 50 years old about. So we're going through, you've got to look at America in the 50 years, and it's still not the exact comparison, but all the trouble that you were going through back then, we got that, and we got bureaucracy and people fighting over, the Federalists and you got Madison and Jefferson against Hamilton, and though the Federalist essays all been written by Latin names, everyone under a pseudonym. Jefferson saying, everyone had to say, I'm not into power, but please give me the presidency. All this stuff that was going on, it's a different sensibility now, but there are certain things that are quite similar. So I analyze, I compare, I contrast, I try and, well, it's because I came out as being transgender 30 years ago. I self-analyzed myself to a certain point. I lay on a bed, on my bed with the curtains closed, and tried to take my brain through, why do I think this way? Why do I feel this way? Tell me, brain, what is going on? Because you build barriers over, like a car crash. Like if you're LGBT, you have this sexuality thing which you think, people are saying this is not a positive thing. So therefore you say, I must have had a car crash of sexuality, the equivalent thing. I will build blocks over that so that it doesn't come out in my conversation, and I just go on and just keep this big secret.
Which kills your creativity.
No, it's just a pocket of your brain. If you have a car crash, it wouldn't kill your creativity.
Okay.
It's the analogy is that people say they can't even remember what happened. They build a wall. It was such a horrible experience, or whatever, or maybe they were mugged or whatever, and they build, they wall it off, and that's what I found I had done. My brain wouldn't let me concentrate on the analysis, but I went through. All I came to the conclusion was that guilt and shame were not my responsibility. Forget those things. I dropped them, but I didn't come to any big conclusions. But I got analysis out of it. I accidentally developed how to do analysis by self-analyzing myself.
And that was a scary moment at the time. A lot of people, as your career was arcing, wouldn't have made the choice to come out. The press could have gone one way or the other. But you just made that decision.
Well, I'd come out 6 years before. So I'd actually come out in 85, and my career was taking off in 91.
Okay.
So I told friends, and then I sort of put it back in the box in a way. And I went down and became a street performer, and I didn't tell anyone there that I was transgender, or transvestite as I called it then. The names keep shifting. Like
you're trans now. It was transvestite.
It was TV when I first. Well,
right.
Transvestite was a bad word. What a negative word. So I was TV. I am TV. And people said, you're television? It was TV and TS, transsexual TV. That was TS and TV. So I said, I'm TV. And people went, what? And then I thought, actually, no, I'm going to reclaim the whole big word, and I'll put action transvestite and executive transvestite. I started building these little sound bites that were positive, because I knew if I talked about it endlessly, I could get loose and throw away about it. So that's what that got to. And then the word moved to transgender, and then trans, and so I said, okay, I'm transgender. And then someone said, I thought you were transvestite. Well, it's the same thing, but vestite implies it's all about the clothes, whereas in fact it's genetics. I'm quite sure it's genetics. They're going to find the genetic strains in there, and I've got...
When you were 4, you knew.
Yeah, I was 4. I knew that I had these feelings. I didn't know quite exactly what was going on.
Those boobs were cool. That dress was cool. I want to wear that. You had these feelings.
The girls, boy was wearing a dress, and I heard about this, and I thought, well, and all the other kids thought it was funny, but I thought, no, that sounds. I'd like to wear a dress. I didn't know why. I couldn't work it out, and I still like girls. So I am this straight transgender, wannabe lesbian, can't explain my...
You said you're a male lesbian, and I've mentioned that to a few people, and my brain does brain tricks with me when I try to think what that means. You describe your version, or your feelings on transgenderism as it's 100% male and maybe 50% female, as in you still have a lot of these lad qualities. You like football, you're hyper-focused.
I wouldn't, I'd say boy qualities. I know lad implies,
Okay.
and I never had that. I never said, go get drunk in the bar. I never could get the drink thing going. but very focused, wanted to be special forces, wanted to do paratroops or Marines, and then to go into the SAS. That was a distinct plan that I was obsessing on until I decided to drop it because I wasn't sure which war I'd be sent to do. And I feel, having just met guys from the SAS recently, what I've done is like civilian special forces. That's what my career has been. I'm doing stuff that is off the map,
Right.
off-piste. No one's guiding me, no one's helping, no backup. Not life dangerous. Well, I don't know, walk around in a dress, you get... I went to the whole of France and I just had one 16-year-old girl, she had dégueulasse, I mean, disgusting, she said.
That was it, though. Just one.
Was that it? Oh, and I had a fight with some other, it was teenage kids, they give you the hardest time. Adults go, and I give off non-victim vibes. I give off non-victim vibes. It's quite 30 years worth of confidence.
Can you describe what that's like, giving off the non-victim vibes?
Non-victim vibes is, it's probably a bad name, it's just, well, it's the inverse of victim. If someone looks at me, I will look back at them and I will attempt to outstare them until they're going, oh, I don't know what I'm looking at. Maybe not Nazis with knives out and whatever, but I will stand my ground. They say when you're riding a bicycle, claim the road and it's better for you to, you heard about this theory? I claim.
Right, but you're not aggressive, but you claim it. You're like, I own this.
Yeah.
I'm not projecting it on you,
no,
but I am here.
I've started walking along the street and actually looking at people. And if someone looks at me, I will stare them out. And I'm not sure if I should be doing this because I don't know, it's being a bit too overt. Teenagers have the biggest problem. It's teenagers. So I had another group of teenagers I had a bit of a contretemps with, and they were making weird noises at me in a train station in Antibes, where I used to sleep on the bench there when I was about 18. So I'd left the building and I went back in to confront them and said, il y a un problème, non, soyez cool, just be cool. Well, and this kid's just going, so you do blowjobs? I said, just be cool. This is all in French going on. And they're giving me negative shit and stuff. And I thought, okay, you've just got to learn, just live and let live, be cool. Everyone's got a right to be everywhere, So I walk out the door, and then the other performer I was working with, a stand-up, Yassine Bellous, he's known from being on comedy on television, and they went, hey, Yassine, so they knew him. That was interesting. So I thought, actually, I'm going to go back and stand next to Yassine. And so Yassine's going, what's going on here? Because he'd heard something's going on. You giving this guy a hard time because he's a good comedian, he's a friend of mine. So you're cool with me, then you've got to be cool with him. And then it was taking sides. And so he said, are we all cool now? And they said, sort of. And he says, okay, we'll do a selfie. And then the boys were not cool, and all the boys, it's on the Twitter. They got these three boys sauntering off in the background, and the girls decided to stay, and they were okay with it. There was one young woman there who was okay with it, but there was this barrage of negativity coming in. So anyway, I will fight this thing. I found usually they're not so overt and aggressive. They were going to giggling and whispering and giggling. And I found this thing that if I see that happening, I will actually go and stand next to them and get my phone out and just start fiddling about and texting next to the group.
Okay. Given the proximity.
Yeah, makes giggling and you can feel that uncomfortable. So we're ready to giggle and point, and he's standing right next to us.
So you're starting a conversation, basically, by doing that.
No, I'm not talking to them.
But I know, but you are. You're engaging them.
I wouldn't say conversations. Okay. I am actually causing, instead of them causing mild to mid-level humiliation to me, I'm causing their negative output to feed back on themselves. It's almost like they're getting feedback. So they're going, what? And because they're less aggressive, so it's kind of safer for me, they're not going, you're a fucking wanker, we hate you. They're going, I wish he was further away, because that's the bubble coming out of their heads. I wish he stood further away, because then we could all point and giggle, and we could sort of giggle at the fact that we're not him. and our lives are better, because that's what gossip is essentially about, is raising your own social status while lowering someone else's. So then they tend to move off a bit, and then I just sort of glide over to wherever they're going. Now, I did this in America, in one place. They were going to a restaurant, and this guy opened the door, and I went in last with my group of friends. I heard they went into giggling and laughing and pointing and all that kind of stuff. So I turned around and went back out, and I stood next to them and did some phone, as if I was about to phone, so I'm trying to get the signal. So it's not overt, it's kind of covert. But then they couldn't giggle, and then they moved over, and I moved over again. And then they left. They were going to the restaurant, and by doing this, they started peeling off in twos and ones and threes. There's about 10 of them. And they started leaving the restaurant. They never even got in the door. They were just holding open the door because they'd got there slightly first. And then they went into the giggling whisper. Isn't that a guy wearing makeup? And they started leaving. And there was one guy who was above this. There's usually one guy who's not that. And he's going, are we going to this restaurant or what? What are we doing? And it had caused that they were so uncomfortable about not being able to giggle and whisper. And if they could all just close down and say, let's just live and not giggle and whisper, then they could have gone in, but they'd already done it, they'd already committed themselves to that, and they probably couldn't backtrack on that weak side of their characters that needed to giggle and whisper and point.
Is your goal to open this idea to the world kind of one person at a time, if you have to, one group at a time?
No, well, I can't really, they've got to work themselves out as they go. The one guy who said, what are we doing? He's probably the one who's going to be okay. The rest of them just have lower characters. It's lower character people who can't think bigger, can't think more openly, that will want to get together, that is the negative thing on our world. So I'm not really doing anything. I don't think that's necessarily going to change them. That I think I could meet up with them again in 5 years and they'd still be giggling and whispering. But it's actually telling, if anyone watching this who's also LGBT or a minority or whatever, just go, and if you stand next to the little bubble of this giggly, whispery humiliation bowl, it just makes them uncomfortable. Instead of you being uncomfortable, they're uncomfortable.
Right. I've understood transgenderism, transvestitism for the first time in my entire life, say 2 days ago, and learning more about you and researching more about you. Because with you, it's not part of your act and it's not a sexual fetish, it's just a part of your very rich character. And so I think so many times when I ever saw someone that was transgender, it was their act. It was 110% of who they were. And I just didn't find that congruent. But with you, it just seems to be part of your character. And now I'm like, okay, he does a show sometimes dressed as a woman, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he does an interview as one, sometimes he doesn't. But it's not his craft and it's not defining him.
I wouldn't say dressed as a woman, I just say wearing a dress. Because women wear pants, trousers, and they don't call it dressed as a man.
Right.
So we should all be able to wear.
To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media login and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.